Welcome to virtual training number 4 for the 2024 National Press Foundation Widening the Pipeline Fellowship. My name is Rachel Jones, and I'm the Director of Journalism Initiatives with NPF. For today's session, the saying, "the only constant is change," has an even greater meaning given the current media environment. But inside of all the turmoil and seeming confusion, there is one constant. Maintaining your ability to evolve and pivot can help you succeed. During this session, our speakers will help us understand how to expand our vision for what's possible in our careers, from strategic networking to an embrace of audience engagement to mastering the ability to shift gears and pivot toward leadership. This discussion will point us towards new career avenues to explore. Our first speaker today is Larry Graham. He's the founder and executive director of the Diversity Pledge Institute, which is a collaborative of veteran professionals committed to fueling diversity, equity, and inclusion by supporting the retention and career development of journalists of color. Larry spent the majority of his career leading sports journalists in newsrooms including ESPN, the San Diego Union Tribune, and the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. And he has served as deputy director of local news transformation for API, where he built the Table Stakes website. You can read more about Larry's impressive career background on our website at nationalpress.org. Larry, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I wanted to revisit our really great conversation last week where we talked about, what might be possible for this session. And what I came away with was the energy that you exude, and certainly your initiative exudes, around the ability to reimagine what's possible in journalism today. So can we start with, well, first of all, tell us where you are right now at the Institute for Nonprofit Journalism meeting.
Yeah, yeah, it's INN Days. It's a collection of different nonprofit newsrooms get together, as well as those nonprofit support service organizations all get together, kind of go over what's happening in journalism, hopefully sharing some best practices, a little bit of networking, and possibly finding new funders and all of that fun stuff. So that's in San Diego here for the next 3 days, which is where I'm at right now.
I want to talk with you about your career. I don't think we've ever talked about this aspect of what I know of your career, but in starting out all those years ago in sports journalism, tell us what the atmosphere and the mood was like in terms of a young African American man entering this particular field. Did you sort of feel like, I want to be doing this 40 years from now, or where was your headspace around
Really, so I have a classical violin degree that I don't use, obviously. And so coming out of college, I was just looking to get into journalism. I did journalism like my last year of college. I kind of got turned on to it very late, but I loved it. So it was just find something. Then once I got a little bit more involved and, you know, as a sports journalist at the Kansas City Star, a sports writer, I remember it was 2 jobs later, I read this article by, maybe it was Scoop Jackson, where he pointed out that there were 4 Black sports editors in the country at the time at a daily newspaper. I think this was like 2002, maybe 2001, 2002, something like that. And he had this line where he was talking to a room full of high school students, because I think at the time there were like maybe 10 Black sports columnists, and he was one of them. And he had this line where he tells all these kids, you have a better chance of making it in the NBA than you do of doing what I do. Those 2 things really hit. They resonated with me. So the 4 Black sports editors, I remember I printed up the number 5, put it on my desk, and that was the goal, is to become a Black sports editor at a major metropolitan newspaper. And it was Obviously, it was a challenge. You go to a lot of these conventions, um, and you wouldn't see a lot of people that look like you. But for me, that's kind of the thing that drives me, being told the things that I can't do. It's also one of the things that gets me in trouble, though. So, but it was definitely a challenge. It was a long climb. That was the last sports job I had was when I reached that. I was at ESPN and someone contacted me about this sports editor job at a major metro in San Diego. And, at the time I kind of said, "Hey, I'm at ESPN. I'm good. I was coming off going to my first Super Bowl. I was like, this is good." But it kept gnawing at me that I had this unfulfilled goal in the back of my mind. And so, it drove me to take that sports editor job. And then it kind of felt like, yeah, I'm good. Dream complete, kind of.
Well, let's pivot from that to the Diversity Pledge Institute. Tell us about the beginnings of that project.
Oh, that's a challenging story. So with DPI, uh, it was a situation where I just felt like I was at API, American Press Institute. That's kind of uh, call itself a journalism think tank. And I was helping manage the table stakes program. I was learning a lot of new things that new skill sets, but I wasn't fulfilled. I didn't feel like I was missing my calling, I guess. And one day I just went in and I'm on a Zoom and I'll spare you the funny details, but I ended up kind of spontaneously putting in my 2 weeks notice on the Zoom call. Um, Kind of surprised my wife too. So I don't, those are things you talk out with your spouse, your partner. But I put in my notice and then from there it was kind of off to the races. It was I attribute some of it to the fear, to the you have to succeed or else. Um, because I had no options. Like I gave myself zero options. So in launching DPI, the goal was to provide folks with free training, mentorship, and support. A lot of the things that I felt were the difference in my career and some of my colleagues and friends. I was at a point in San Diego where there's this woman, I'd known her uh maybe 10, 11 years. She's an amazing journalist, but she stayed at the same newspaper for her entire career. And she was making, honestly, I think she was 10 times more talented than I was. She was making maybe $44,000 a year. And at the height of my career, my journalism career, I think I peaked at like 150. And I think the difference for me was I had so many people in my ear, so many people providing me with that mentorship, training, support, introducing me to people, picking up my bar tab, doing all those things, taking me out to lunch and introducing me to folks, all those things that this other person didn't have. And so for me, it was it was I wanted to create something that provided all of those things. And I say it's free mentorship, free training, free support. That's because I can in good conscience charge somebody for something that I always got for free. So for individual to individual journalists, we're free help and helping them figure out how to negotiate salary, how to navigate white spaces, how to manage up financial leadership, how to negotiate a severance. I mean, so many people, they don't even know you can negotiate a severance, so it's free help, training, support. And kind of on the flip side, it was to also help newsrooms be better, like for them to live up to, hate to say it, not that I'm the be all end all, but my expectations of how a newsroom should be, how they should be treating people. So that was kind of the goal with starting DPI. And it was Like I said, I didn't have room to fail because I didn't have a job when I quit, and I just said I was going to do this thing. I don't encourage you to go about entrepreneurship that way. That was the wrong way to do it, but I feel like it worked out great for me because I do know the things that do help motivate me.
I'm going to turn it over to you now, but I just want to quickly tell the journalists that Larry is providing us with such a powerful example of what we can do to support each other in this process. I feel that it's always been my own personal operating principle is it costs me nothing to try to help somebody else figure it out. So thank you for that. So why don't you take it away? You prepared a couple of slides for us. Let's go there.
Yeah, and so I usually I'm kind of a dessert first kind of person, so forgive me. Um, but ah, like I said, there's logic to it. So I kind of wanted to start with any questions that you all had of me, um, as far as my career or things that I might be able to provide you with assistance on.
Well, I'm going to jump in and let Brianna put her on the spot because she made a comment in the chat about thanking you for talking about money. So, Brianna, please introduce yourself to Larry and tell us why you wrote that question or you made that comment.
Yeah, my name's Brianna Rice. I work at Michigan Public. So I'm a public radio reporter. Yeah, I just thanked you for being specific with money. I feel like it's something that people avoid talking about, and a lot of people get offered 44,000 and get really stuck there. To even know they made 150, like what the possibilities are. I feel like a lot of people are not comfortable answering. And I do ask people, I'm like, like, I think there's just like this wall there, especially for people of color, and like not knowing constantly makes us not know how to advocate for more money or not know what the possibilities are. So yeah, I mean, I guess, do you want to talk a little bit about how you got to a place to be transparent there, and if you in your experience found that people were transparent about money or how that works for you?
Yeah, no, most people aren't. It's a very uncomfortable subject. For me, I got to that point because uh, with the last sports job I had, it wasn't really a job that I was looking to have. It was, like I said, I had a great job. I loved the job I had. So having these folks want to talk to me about this opportunity, I asked for everything. I asked for the stars, the sky, the moon. It was like, I need a 3-year contract. I need 10 grand, 12 grand a year raise every single year. I need new hires. I mean, I asked for everything because I figured at the worst, I get to just stay at my current job. And then it threw me for a loop. And there's a book called, I think it's something like Find a Way to Yes, where you're finding a way to say yes to something. They can say no to what your request is, but you're finding a way to say yes. So for me, those were all the things I needed to say yes to this opportunity. And then it kind of threw me for a loop when they said, okay, you got it. And then I had to take the job. And that's really what kind of got me to that point where I was like, yeah, we should be transparent. We should be sharing. We should be letting each other know what's possible. There was a young woman, she was part of Gannett's layoffs back, what was that, 2022? At the end of the year, they ended up doing like 3 rounds of layoffs in like 4 months. And she'd been in journalism for 12, 13 years. And, we were put in touch and she was just like, I just want a job where I can finally make $50,000 a year. And she's like, but I know journalism is not, it doesn't pay well. There's no money in journalism. But I feel like I need to at least make 50,000 a year. And I told you that's just ridiculous. To me, with your skill set, you should be at 85 or $90,000 a year. And she laughed, and I get a lot of people do that with me when I tell them things like that, because that wasn't her experience. That wasn't the conversation she was a part of. And so she's just laughing and she ends up, we hang up, we do a couple of texts, and then I introduce her to a hiring manager. Maybe 4 weeks later, another 4 weeks later, she got the job offer, and it was what, 89,500. And she called and she was just like, I just don't believe this. I was like, yeah, but don't forget, you also have these other two that put you in front of these other two people. So there are these other opportunities. You do want to have the best option is to have multiple options. Then you have more leverage. You can negotiate better when you have three. If you get three offers, you can make sure you're paid what you're worth instead of what a company feels like they can get away with. And she didn't listen to me because, again, she went from like 44 to 89. So she was just like, damn. And she didn't have to move. But, it's providing her and others with that knowledge so that then they can share it and they feel comfortable sharing it. And then the next person feels comfortable sharing it so that there's a lot more transparency and people can get paid what they're worth.
But isn't the core of that example that as individuals, we have to really get in touch with our worth and know what our expertise and our lived experience and our brains are worth?
Yes and no. And so on that, I usually tell folks the market will let you know what your services are worth. So if you're looking for a job and you saying, hey, I want to make 150 at this next job, and nobody's hiring you for 150, then maybe that's not the spot. So I tell folks, hey, figure out your floor and your ceiling. Find out the jobs that you can apply for and get that job at that level, at that salary. Find out what that is, but then also know what's the aspirational, what's the one that you're going for that's all right, 20 grand more, 40 grand more, 60 grand more. You don't figure that out really until you test the market. And I think I also tell everybody, you need to find out when it comes to that personal board of directors, you need to find that person that tells you suck. That person that's going to be completely 100 with you, that's not like your mom or your friends. You need, like right now, my advisory board at DPI is everybody that's on it are people that have told me how wrong I was. Like my board of directors, which is our governance, that's very friendly to me because, since the board of directors can fire you, even though I'm the founder, us being a nonprofit, I really didn't like the idea of building something and then being able to be fired. So I wanted to put people at the top that would be friendly towards me, but are knowledgeable. But that advisory board, all people that have told me and will tell me when I'm completely screwing up on a regular basis. That's the other thing that you need, especially as for you to figure out, what your value is, what your worth is in this field.
Larry, if I had met you 20 years ago, I'd be the editor of the New York Times right now. That was such a powerful message and lesson. All right, who else has questions?
Kayla has one.
Hey, Kayla.
Hi there, Larry. So good to hear from you today, and thank you so much for being here. You bring up the aspect of board of directors. It's something that our fellowship cohort has talked about several times over the past few months. And when I think about adding people to my board of directors, the people that I kind of have as mentors, I realize I have a lot of journalism professionals, a lot of people who might be leaders or strategists in other fields, maybe consulting, maybe nonprofits. And the more that I kind of like understand how like my newsroom as a corporation and as a business works, I also realized that there's like a whole kind of like back room of like HR professionals, the people who manage the money and the people who manage the corporate structure. And I'm wondering, is it valuable or is it worth it to, see how much you can talk to people either within your company or outside your company who are like the HR people who understand like how the sausage gets made, who have that underlying understanding of like, they're working for the good of the company, not so much the employees of the people. Or is that not like an area that's kind of worthwhile to kind of wade into? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I like so my first hire at DPI was not a journalist. My second hire at DPI was not a journalist. My part-timer was not a journalist. And that was more or less by design. I feel like, in journalism, that access to other journalists, when I say it's easy, it's kind of easy. You can get introductions if you ask for them. You can find new mentors. It's those folks where one of my board of directors, she's the dean of the LSU Law School. She's the first Black dean of the LSU Law School. One of them's a VP of a tech company. One of them's a VP at CNN. One of them's a former journalist at Roblox. This is my governing board. And then there was another who also had another one that had a law degree. In journalism, you can talk to other editors, but finding other entrepreneurs, finding other people with a legal background, an HR background, with all these other experiences outside of journalism, that's harder. But it ends up being invaluable because there's a whole other world out there. In journalism, we like to get in our little bubble, and we're great at research. We're great at digging in and reporting and editing, and we have these skill sets. But I think one of the problems, lack of a better word, are having research more or less and learning being part of and being, connecting with people, part of our jobs, our responsibilities. We tend to feel like we can do just about anything. So for instance, when it comes to some survey work, we jump on SurveyMonkey, create a quick survey, and all right, we figure we're good. But if you really want to do a survey right, you probably need someone with the expertise in qualitative analysis, at least one of those for that survey to be done and to have all the best practices involved with that type of work. And so I use the analogy of in journalism, if I wanted to, a journalist most likely, let's say my car breaks down, you'll look it up, you'll figure out how I can look it up, figure out, hey, what's wrong with the car and how to fix it. But I'm no mechanic. So I don't want to be the first person driving my car after I figured out how to fix it. That's why I take it to a mechanic. So it's finding out all these other ways to do things from these other people, from a mechanic, from, the learning from the actual people in these other spaces so that, you get a better appreciation, but also learn how to do those things right. When it comes to things like churn, you have been in the business space, you hear a lot about churn in journalism now, but that's common terminology in a business practice. I mean, for decades, journalists are getting into newsletters now, but other spaces it's a more defined practice. So I say expand that board, find the different voices in the room, the different expertise, because the ones outside of journalists, they're going to have a whole other different perspective. And I will also say a lot of times they get paid more. So it can lead to other opportunities of making more money, to be quite honest.
Larry is reminding me of the way I even learned about him and was introduced to him was when I was trying to secure Yinchi Shu of the Flatwater Free Press. I was trying to get her to come to our opening widening session, and I was speaking with the editor of the paper. Forgive me, I'm forgetting his name, but he absolutely insisted that I had to speak to Larry Graham of the Diversity Pledge Institute. And so to me, that's an example of the fact that if we are really being authentic and doing our work well and building our expertise, we have an exponential benefit when we leave such a good impression on people that they say our name. they recommend us. They say, if you're going to be doing that, I met somebody the other day who's absolutely brilliant, and you should get to know her. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Keisha has her hand raised. So Keisha, introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Keisha. I'm a producer at PBS NewsHour. Hearing you talk about your career, it sounds like there were moments where you took leaps of faith. I'm curious though, like how you made sure that they were calculated leaps of faith though.
Yeah, and I think some of that comes with your board. And then some of that comes with just betting on yourself. And I always encourage folks, always bet on you. If as long as you feel confident betting on you. So they were always calculated and thought out, except for the quitting the job and launching DPI thing. But I will say that's been the best learning experience. But I try to make sure folks know if you should treat your career the way you would treat your beat, the way that you would more or less treat your job. If you're looking for a new job, you know all the people who are, the types of hiring managers, or well, like let's say in sports journalism, if I'm covering I'm a high school preps writer. I know all the coaches. I know the players on the different teams. I know the different sports I'm supposed to be covering. I know the athletic directors. I get to know the parents. And how does that translate in a professional setting for you? Who are the hiring managers you should know? Who are the folks that elevate, that speak your name when you're not in the rooms? Who are the HR professionals that actually do more than just a cursory, performative interview, and that actually feel invested? Who are the hiring managers that have a history of hiring people of color, women and people of color? Who are the hiring managers? Where do their hires end up at the next steps in their careers? Like all those things are things I usually recommend you want to research, you want to look into as you think about your career. It's one of the things that I've always thought of in mind. It's all right. And even when I was a hiring manager, I wanted to be the type of hiring manager that can say, hey, I gave this person their first shot, their first column. Now they were ranked best columnists in the country. Hey, I gave this person their first college beat writer. Now they're winning all these awards. You want to know what that landscape looks like the same way you would in your job.
I'm curious about, again, in your career is as a Black man in newsrooms, are you automatically on guard for the way people are responding, the way you're being perceived? Is that something that you think about, or do you?
Oh, I think one of the reasons I'm not in the newsroom is I don't see people like me in leadership positions in newsrooms. Like the number of Black men in those top positions, it's not a lot. And I remember I had this experience where me and this other colleague were having a disagreement. And I'm sitting there and I'm just like this, and I'm having the disagreement. She's raising her voice. I'll admit I was speaking a little bit louder, but I'm keeping my hands on the table. All right. And because I know their perception. And so we leave, and then later my boss, he's talking to my managing editor ends up talking to the executive editor about the interaction. And he's like, and you were waving your hands and just, it was like you were foaming at the mouth. And, I was worried for her safety. And I'm like, in the history of my life, I have not been described that way. But you feel like for some reason, this was that one instance. And he did his best to portray me as the angry Black man. So throughout my career, I'm very aware. and it's it kind of sucks. And there's a lot of trauma there, to be quite honest. That trauma is also possibly one of the reasons I'm not in a newsroom right now, because that's just not the space that's good for my mental health. But it's it it's uh, it has given me a drive to prove all those people wrong, anyone that's painted me with that brush, you know? And yeah.
The reason I asked that, Larry, I'll be honest, and because we have so many women in the fellowship cohort, women of color are automatically, we often have to confront that. I know throughout my career, if I didn't uh, bring a bubbly, happy, laughy energy into the newsroom, or if I objected to anything, even not in an angry or hostile way, it got me put in that box. She's a standoffish. Who does she think she is? She's just always angry. You can never. So I wanted to hear it from the male perspective, but also to have the journalists be mindful of that aspect of reimagining ourselves in our career. Any other
Well,
comment?
folks, how many who can turn on their camera? Like, there's a lot of cameras off. I'm not the biggest fan of no cameras. I know we all work from home, but I like to, connect with people, which usually means cameras on and all that other good stuff. Um, and then also share a little bit. So right now, what I think a quarter of you, if my research is right, are at different positions. 25% of you all are in different positions or about to be in different positions than you were at the start of the program. And journalists, our skill sets, what we can do, it's kind of remarkable. Like, most of us don't realize just writing an email how priceless that is. So for instance, if you just pull up an email from someone not in journalism, any of your friends or families, or go scroll through your phone, check out your text messages and look at their versus they are misspelled or TOOTO, and written wrong. You take a look at those things, and what we do, how we're able to communicate, it's invaluable. And there's other organizations will pay for it. So for anyone that feels like they're not in their ideal job, that they want to be doing something else, that, hey, they're in this toxic situation, a shitty newsroom, you have other options. All right. You have the journalism adjacent space, with some of these, the foundations. You have nonprofit newsrooms, which are, good and bad. There's the challenges. A lot of them are kind of like startups, and startups are really hard. You have entrepreneurship, starting and building your own thing. That's scary as hell, but it's also enlightening. It's, worthwhile. And for me, I was in a couple of positions where, like, sports journalism, a lot of time it's called the toy department. It's the fun department. It's not always taken seriously. So then transitioning to news, it's like, what's this sports person? No, whatever. Don't really need to listen to them. But there's this constant, you'll get this narrative throughout your career of what you can and can't do. Don't believe that at all. Right now with DPI, like I said, I started from scratch. I enrolled in grad school so that at the time of starting DPI, so I could build and learn how to build, learn the business of journalism, learn the business of business. So in creating something, I I don't screw it completely up. And so I went from these roles where I felt like I was constantly told I was less than, to this company that I started, which we had our official launch in October of 2021. I'm thinking back because our 990s, our taxes, since we are a nonprofit, that's public. I think we brought in $89,000 in revenue that year. The following year, I think in 2022, it was 333,000 in revenue. Last year, it was 280,000. I was a sports editor 7 years ago. I was an assistant managing editor just 4 years ago, and constantly told that I couldn't do things, that I was less than. And somehow, in a very short amount of time, I created a company that made $300,000, and that I was responsible for 99% of that revenue. Did I think that that was possible? Hell no. Was I told that it would not? I was told constantly from a million people, nobody would want what you're selling, what you're buying. And I do take a certain amount of pride in knowing I proved them wrong, and I will continue to prove them wrong. So if you do have an idea, if you have other things you want to do, give it a shot. Don't feel as though you're limited by what the position you're in, or what people tell you about yourself. All right. Like, have that advisory board, have that trusted group, so you can, you have people that'll be 100 with you, but like, don't believe the labels that you may be given in your workplaces, because in all likelihood, you're all better than that.
Hi, Larry. It's so nice hearing you talk about a lot of things that kind of resonate with so many of us. You were talking about earlier how we should approach our career as we do our beats. And that's something that I'm thinking about doing now, 8 years in. So a little late, but I definitely want to do that right. So what I wanted to ask you about was, when you're entering a new outlet or like a new space, what are the things that you should kind of apply that research towards, if it's an outlet that you want to grow at, and that you want to, if you're starting off at an opportunity that's not necessarily your final destination, and if you want to map out a path to kind of get somewhere else in a year or two, how do you go about kind of charting that path, and what do you look for? Where do you begin?
Yeah. For me, when it was becoming a sports editor, that was the goal. It wasn't necessarily a place, it was a position. It was one that I honestly did not feel I might get to, but it was aspirational. It was hard. That way it makes it so you don't quit. You pick the thing that's it's elevated. And then you figure out the right people that can help you along the way, that can support you. You want to be honest with yourself of why you're doing it. Early in my career, it really was just about the money. I would give my employer one chance to give me a 2% raise, and then I'm looking for a new job, because I knew I was worth more than a 2.5% raise or a 3 out of 5 review. And you'd ask, and it'd be like, well, nobody gets a 5. Well, I definitely should have got a 4+ then. So a lot of my mapping then, with just being honest with myself, it did just come down to finances. So, hey, if you're going to give me 2.5% raise, I could leave here in 18 months and I'll get a $15,000 raise. So to me, that's just math. So I'll take that 15K. And then when you do that math over, let's say 10 years, all right, so if I would have stayed there, I kept getting a 2%, which maybe might be $1,000 over 10 years, that's 10,000 or $15,000 more just in that first year. And that's not if I move on, not if I don't get another new job, but that's $15,000. So what that times 10, that comes out to 150. So my lifetime earnings during, well, let's just say over that 10-year stretch, if I would have stayed, it would have been the difference between 10,000 and 150,000. So again, that becomes just math to me. And that's I knew about myself that was the motivator so early in my career. I wanted to get paid and I was not going to settle for just 2%. Now it's, hey, figuring out the right people that I want to surround myself with. How do I get better? How do I get smarter? How do I learn more? Making sure that any room that I walk into, I try to make sure that I feel like I'm the dumbest person in the room. And that way I know that there's a value to being in that room as opposed to being the smartest person. And then there's just no point. I need a new room. So it's I think figuring that out helps you chart your career path, like high aspirations, but being honest with yourself about what you want. Like, is it a values thing or is it a financial thing? And it's not, there's like earlier, we're kind of conditioned to not discuss money or salary. And that's something we all need to get over. Share that shit, the stuff.
Hi,
I have
Larry.
a-
Sorry, go for it.
I have another brief question. Sorry, DT.
I'm going to jump in, Mahar, because I'm mindful of the time, and I do want to see whatever slides that you have prepared for us, Larry. So do you jump in there and do that? Or would you rather?
Yeah, I'm going to share this one real fast because there is kind of a narrative of just starting your own thing right now, starting your own newsroom. And for some folks, they can raise $3, $5, $15 million in a year. Most of us ain't that. Our complexion kind of makes that a little bit more challenging. Our gender makes that a little bit more challenging. And then on top of that, it is starting something. It's just hard. It kind of sucks at times, but it does end up, at least in my opinion, proving worthwhile. And so here's the one slide I'll share. It's kind of a Vegas rule slide. This was my checking account in, what was this? Maybe May or June. That's a big negative number. That has never happened to me before in my life. That is a giant negative number. But also that's entrepreneurship, more or less. And I remember I shared this slide in a room full of other folks, other journalists turned entrepreneurs, and they're like, they clapped and they got it. My credit score is gone from like 810 to it was really low and then back up to like 799. I think I'm back at now. That's not over the course of 10 years. That's been my score over the last like 18 to 24 months. The entrepreneurship angle, like it takes a lot of grit for anyone that wants to take it on, to start your own newsroom, to, maybe kicking off your own newsletter. Yeah, go for it. Bet on you, but it is hard. It's a lot of, the highs are great, the lows suck. But when you are doing, at least I feel like the way I am, where it is living my values, where it's helping people get jobs, helping people get that severance package that the company didn't want to give them, it's so worth it. But I don't want anybody to be fooled into thinking that, hey, this is an easier route, because it is hard. You will cry at some point, and probably every quarter. But it is, for me, it's worth it.
Rachel, you're on mute.
Mahar, you wanted to do a quick follow-up, and then I think, did I see Sade have her hand raised? But Mahar, go ahead.
Didi had a question. I'll just email Larry later afterwards.
Okay.
Thank you, Larry. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Meher. Hi, Larry. Thank you so much for this. I just wanted some of your advice on like what should we tell ourselves when the kind of environment you are in and the people you're dealing with around you, when you want, say, when you want to renegotiate your salary or go for a different job, the narrative that you come across is we should be grateful to have jobs at all, lots of layoffs going on, uh, you know, jumping is hard or asking for more money is hard. So what advice would you give
Um,
to, keep going?
yeah, I typically don't ask for a raise unless I got another offer. And even for my staff, when I would hire people, my teams, I would be like, hey, at least when I was in a newsroom, it's like, hey, uh, I can't just go to my boss and get you more money as much as I would like to. You get another offer, I have some leverage. I have some room to work with so that I can get you more money. But I need you to help me out here. Because you, I learned very early that it just the number of times that someone will just give you a raise, uh, just because it's rare. Granted, they have a bottom line and all of that, but also there's this thought that we're all kind of interchangeable, that you can just find another one. You can just replace this person. And it's a bad mindset that a lot of folks fall into, because from a financial standpoint, it is cheaper to give someone a raise than it is to go out and hire someone new. Like if I'm charging someone 40 grand to help them fill a position, man, shit, they could have just given the person a 20 grand raise and they wouldn't have left. It's just math. So, but that's usually not how it works. So, I usually recommend, hey, if it's if you're looking for more money, give them a reason to make them give you more money. The downside of that is you need to be willing to leave if they say, no, we're not willing to do that. I'll be honest, I'm kind of patiently petty is what I call it, or maybe someone else called me patiently petty, but I would plan out some of my exits to the point of I know how they value me, that they're not going to give me more money. So I will ask for more, and I'll go through an interview process. And if I feel good, I might have felt like, all right, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get this job offer. Let me go to my employer and ask for more money just to ask. And then they say no. And then 10 days later, I get the job offer. And then I go back to let them know, hey, I have this offer. Oh, we'll match that. And it's like, oh, hell no. Like, I don't see how you're going to offer me this money today when you wouldn't give it to me 10 days ago. You suddenly got all this new money that you can afford me now? No. So I like to have a reason, giving them a reason to help them help themselves.
We have questions. We'll take a couple more from Idly and then Olivia.
Hi, Larry. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Going off of what you were just sharing, I'm curious, like, what you would advise us when it comes to making the case for getting that raise. I think a lot of the times in reporting roles, it's almost expected that you go above and beyond anyways, in like, take, time on the weekends, extra time during the week to pursue investigative story or other things that are not in your job description. And that's just like expected now. So how do you make the case that, I've done a lot, I've accomplished a lot, and I deserve, a decent raise here?
And so this can also be used for severance negotiations as well, but you're making a financial case. So depending on your newsroom, let's say it's a newsroom that does digital subs, and you can show, all right, over the course of the last 6 to 12 months, I've been second in the newsroom in digital subs. Those digital subs amount to X amount of dollars. So over the course of these next 2 years, I'm going to bring in Y amount of dollars. You make it a financial case, all right? And then you can also do the same thing when it comes to severance, so that, hey, I'm offered 2 months. Wait, but you got these new lifetime subscribers that are bringing in revenue based off of my work for the next 10 years. So you change, you make the financial case, you change the narrative. Other ways, like I said, I've tried a lot of them. Sometimes it will work out where someone just feels guilty and they just want to offer you more money because they're like, man, I'm underpaying you. That's happened to me once, well, twice in the same year. But it's rare. So it's you want to make it so that you're kind of not guilt them into it, but put them in a position where they have to say yes. It's either that or you maybe end up leaving. And if you're in a toxic newsroom anyway, get the hell out of there. Like, don't forget, your mental health is invaluable. A job that's making you work 60 hours a week but paying you for 40, man, A, illegal, but then B, is that really the job you want to have? Because you will, in other industries, a lot of the times those, like lawyers, they get paid a lot to put in 90 hours a week. If you're putting in 90 and you're not getting paid, like I put in a ridiculous amount of hours, but I built this. I'm comfortable putting in this hours for the thing that I'm invested in. I would never put in all these hours again just to put money in somebody else's pocket.
Powerful, powerful insights. Olivia.
Hi, Larry. Thanks for taking the time to chat with us. So on your note about get an offer and make the case. So if you've already gotten the offer and you've already made the case, how do you make sure it like stays on track so you actually can like get through the process? Because like in my case, for example, the offer I got was not better, wasn't what I wanted anyways. But I did still tell my employer I got this offer, made the case I made a case for promotion because we're in status quo, so promotions can happen, but raises outright are a little more tricky with the union situation. But now just how much and how often like do you follow up and keep that conversation going? Because like to your point, like it's the boss above the boss that holds these things up. So how do I carry that portion of the conversation to keep it going and actually make it come to fruition?
So this is probably not the popular opinion. But typically, a lot of bosses, in my experience, they prolong that actual financial incentive, giving you that raise. They prolong that for as long as possible. So how often should you follow up? As often as you feel like your relationship with your supervisor allows, so that they don't get annoyed, but so that they know you haven't forgotten. If you have the type of relationship where it's 3 to 6 months, that's great. I encourage, there's that dynamic between the reporter and editor. It's a lot of time it's broken. There's a lack of trust on both sides. And it's something that needs to be worked on. And good managers, they build that trust so that you can have those honest conversations. If you're in that situation, hopefully more of you are in situations like that. It makes it so that's just a conversation. It's not an email. It's just a talk and nobody gets upset. In bad newsrooms, like you may never see that money. Like, just being honest, it'll be the thing that's promised and never come through. And even if you've gotten it in writing. So it depends on your manager.
We have come to near the end of our time with you, Larry, but this has been an incredibly valuable conversation. You've offered us some incredible advice. And so I'd like to ask you to take us home in this session by giving us a reason to stay hopeful about being men and women of color in this industry, during a time when we are seeing things like the backlash to DEI, and there's just so much going on that could lead us to think it's a losing proposition. What would you say to us to keep us staying strong?
Honestly, y'all typically y'all inspire me. Like it's I don't think I have anything that can be inspirational. I'm not in a newsroom. I've seen job openings and I'm not in a place where I even apply. But I end up seeing all of you all, the work that a lot of you have done. That for me, that's been inspiring. Um, if you reach that point where you want to do something else, though, um, take some of those chances. Take that risk. Um, Again, I never considered myself the smartest person in any of my newsrooms. I never, I thought I had I know I had a chip on my shoulder. I wanted to prove people wrong. But I would have never imagined that I could figure out how to make $300,000 in a year. To me, that never crossed my mind. And now it's like, well, if I could do that, what else can I do? And again, I'd say I was an average student in school, but I worked hard. You all, if I can do that, y'all could probably do twice as much, 3 times as much. It's just letting your imaginations go, putting things into practice, taking that chance. But yeah, for inspiration, y'all inspire me more than anything else. You're still in these newsrooms. You're still battling it out. You still have a lot of hope and, you still are trying to have an impact in these different communities in a way that I feel like I'm not doing right now. So yeah, for me, it's you all provide the hope.
Larry, you are a welcome new member of the Widening the Pipeline family, and I want to thank you so much for joining us. Let's show Larry Graham of the Diversity Pledge Institute our Zoom appreciation. Thank you so much for joining us. Safe travels.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you all. I threw in my cell phone as well as my email. Please, if you need anything, like I said, we're free help. If I can't help, I put you in touch with someone that can. But yeah, please keep doing what you're doing because you all are making a difference.
Look, these widening peeps will blow you up. So be ready. They'll be calling and writing and carrying on. So enjoy your time out at the INN conference, and please stay in touch with us.
Definitely. Talk again soon, I hope. Thanks,
All right.
y'all.